warm welcome to an exciting episode of The Inner Office, focusing on women, well-being, and redefining success. Today, we're honored to host Swapna Vadlamani, who heads People Partnering at Novartis. Extending a warm welcome to you, Swapna. Any welcome words before we go ahead?
Thanks a lot, Ravi. Really delighted to be here in your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Swapna. A quick intro. Swapna is a HR leader with several years of global experience in the areas of business partnering, talent development, leading change, cultural initiatives, and coaching. She's covered areas and segments on transformational initiatives, OD interventions, leadership development, driving culture, coaching leaders, D&I, etc. She has in-depth knowledge of all facets of human resources across several sectors, such as pharma, IT, and ITES. And she's been operating in a global environment all through her career. Just want to read out one compliment before we go ahead, Swapna. This is, I think, from Emily Grant-Barrett. She says, I had the pleasure of working with Swapna during her time as a P&O HR head at Novartis Czech Republic. From the outset, she demonstrated a consistently collaborative and constructive approach, always bringing professionalism and positive spirit to every interaction. She's a true role model for our values and behaviors, and ability to foster trust, listen actively, and drive meaningful outcomes made her a highly respected partner across teams. So with that, let's start off with the themes under the Inner Office podcast. We have a title, Thriving Under Pressure, Women, Wellbeing, and Redefining Success. Let's look at the themes. We look at the micro habits for everyday resilience to actually start off with. Swapna, I'm very curious to see how you will hold this in your own lens. What are some small but powerful habits that actually help you stay centered in emotionally intense roles? And how can teams normalize recovery and rest without labeling it as disengagement?
Sure, Ravi. So I think in today's world, we are constantly hearing this feedback that our life is full on, which means in a way, emotional intensity has become more of a norm than an exception, right? So it feels right by asking this as the first question, saying what habits actually help us thrive in moments like this. My second and the most important reflection has been that as leaders, our habits, be it the good ones or the not so good ones, do have a ripple effect on people, those around you. And I think that's a very, very important reflection for us to hold, because the way I show up with my habits, in a way, also translates on the team and the people around me. So that's something that I have always tried focusing on. What are some of the habits that serves me as an individual, but also something that will kind of help on my team or the people that I work with, right? So I'm happy to take two quick micro habits that I've really built through the years. So the first one is front loading the high impact stuff. Now, what do I mean by that? It can happen at a professional front or on the personal front. What I try to do is doing things that really matter when I begin the day or the week. For example, it can be your exercise routines, reading a book, spending time with family. Also on the professional front, I have always seen a lot of tendency that we do things that are easy to do, or we do things that we love to do. But I think something that I have really reoriented for myself is to do things that really matter, doing things that are really, really high value. Because I am someone who has a lot of energy in the mornings or during the beginning of the week. So how do I ensure I maximize on that approach? And another thing that I have learned the more I have started to handle a team is front loading the work where I need to get work done through my team. So I can't afford to say that, you know what, I'm a last minute person. I like working under stress. So I'm going to start something right at the fag end. Because when you do that, you're also stressing out your own people, right? So how are you really aware and being very conscious on the fact that your habit also has a ripple effect on your team? So I also try to front load as much as possible where I really need to work with people around. Because once you keep your high impact stuff out of the way, then it kind of creates a lot of space for all of us. It sounds simple, but I really think it is a really powerful habit that I have developed over time. And also habits do take a bit of a time for us to develop, right? It really doesn't help overnight. So the micro habits that really help me do this is really planning and prioritizing. I literally do that on a daily basis. Sometimes even that 10 minutes of self reflection time is going to be intensely helpful for me.
Absolutely.
The second one, Ravi, is how do I show up as a leader in intense situations? And I can tell you this is something that's really close to my heart because your state of mind is really contagious. Because as a leader or as a person in the organization, I can either multiply calm or I can multiply stress. And the way you show up will also mirror that kind of energy in the team. So, something that I have figured over the years is staying composed, even when you have this storm inside you, I think is one of the biggest leadership traits, I would say. So, something that I usually operate on, for example, whenever I really have an emotionally intense situation, I would obviously plan, right? I do my laundry list of 20 things that I need to do, but I would always come back to point zero and say, okay, now how do I want to show up in this situation? If you don't do that pause, reflect, look at the how side of it, then you might come across as a leader who's really anxious, who's really stressed out, which is then again really counterproductive to your team.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that's when your teams also feel really safe and anchored, right? So I believe that that's an important trait for a leader, and that's something that I've really worked hard on. So talking about the micro habit here is really pause, reflect, focus on the how rather than just the what, because if you're not intentional about it, then things can go haywire. And most importantly, whether we realize it or not, people are always observing you, right? The way you show up, your body language, all that gets very, very evident. So this is something that I have again worked quite actively, I would say. These are things I've seen a lot of people struggle. And I don't mean to say I have arrived. I also struggle sometimes. But the fact that as a leader, I take that accountability of managing myself better, it does create a bit of a ripple effect on our teams.
Absolutely.
So, understanding what your triggers are, what your perspectives and what your preferences are, and are they serving you and your team well? I think that's an excellent starting point for all of us.
So I think your teams are very lucky to have you as the leader. That's my first observation. And I think the first answer you have got power-packed, powerful habits, which you actually detailed in, which was very, very useful for all listeners. Swapna, thanks so much for a really good start. Moving to reactive and to proactive emotional cultures, Swapna. Uh, what shifts can help workplaces move from emergency response mental health to everyday emotional safety? And can you share examples where proactive practices prevented burnout or disengagement? I think hearing it in your words could actually make it more alive for all of us.
No, absolutely, Ravi. If there's any one topic that we have been hearing a lot upfront is on lines of resilience, mental health, and stuff like that, right? So for this question, I would really like to start with a story here. Now, almost till few years back, whenever I had any high pressure event, let's say a project or a milestone, I had this habit of going all guns blazing, which also means I would compromise on a lot of pillars of my health, which means I would compromise on my sleep, I would compromise on my nutrition, I probably wouldn't do my exercise well, I wouldn't rest well, right? So there's no relaxation that happens to your body and mind. And once you get into that spiral, then it's really hard for you to come out. Again, unless you're really very intentional about it, it's hard for you to come out. So I have observed that I would totally burn out after these high pressure events. I would come home crashing. I would probably even land up in a migraine because you are so sharp in your head that I really want to give a high performance streak to this project. Now, this is more of an individual story, but imagine if many associates and teams are mirroring the same energy, then what would happen to the mental health of our people, right? So coming to the proactive side of burnout, the one thing that I have learned over a period of time is able to see the interplay between sustained high impact and your healthy habits. So that connection, if you are able to see, then you also understand as an individual that if I really need to perform to the best of my ability, that journey starts with self in terms of how do you really taking care of yourself. So one is the what side of your wellness initiatives, be it as an organization, as an individual, you say, okay, these are all the things that I want to do. But are you storytelling to your teams, to your people, to your organization on why you need to do that? That interplay, that interconnectedness. And if you are able to convey that story, then I really think it will get powerful.
Absolutely.
Now, fast forward, the way I lead my energy today is as a part of, so for example, I'm jumping into a high critical project. As a part of my preparation itself, I include some of these practices, right? I list down 10 things that I need to do. And as a part of that, I say, okay, 1 hour of walking every day. I'm not missing my workout. I am getting my 8 hours of sleep. I am ensuring I will not pause my self care routine. So when you do that, and I have observed this in real time, right? When I have done this, in those stressful situations, I was really able to deliver, and I was also able to perform with a big smile on my face. Because you are not a mobile phone, right? That overnight you plug and then you are charged and then you can go and present yourself. That doesn't work out, unfortunately, right? So I think these are my reflections to really focus on sustained high performance, be it at an individual level, at a team level, but also at an organization level. And for that, really, awareness is just a start. The real impact comes when you start building some of these routines in the flow of work.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how many Fridays you attend these great well-being sessions or whatever, but if you don't bring some of these into your flow of work, then it really does not land, right? Two, I think it's a shared contract. If as an individual I have to be emotionally well charged, in my view, there are three parties, right? One, me as an individual, two, the organization, three, the leader and the team. So when all of these folks come together, that's when I think truly the magic happens. It doesn't work even if one of the factor that I've mentioned doesn't get compromised. And that's why as a leader, it is important that you are proactive, you take care of your energy, you are able to role model some of these things yourself, and it has a ripple effect really on the broader organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think the insight which I culled out of your answer is well-being isn't a benefit, it's a leadership behavior. And when leaders like you normalize emotion, teams begin to trust and heal. Moving to the overperformance trap, Swapna, how can women break free from the pattern of overcompensating for systemic underestimation? And what was the one moment or moments in your journey when you chose to say, this is enough? So it would be lovely to know how this theme has shaped you over the years.
That's a totally relatable question, if I can say, Ravi. And I'm one of those people who very clearly went into that overcompensation trap because I would believe it's a badge of honor to have, only to realize over a period of time that it's actually counterproductive. And I've kind of learned that lesson in a very hard way. And I can again narrate an incident that happened probably a decade back. So when I was having my child, I worked right up until the last day of my pregnancy, not because I had to, because I kind of wanted to prove myself. So I wanted this badge of honor in my head that, you know what, this is how I have worked till the last date of my pregnancy, and then, went to the hospital and delivered a child. Now, where does that come from? It's clearly that self-induced belief or a trap, I would say. And for me, unfortunately, I carried the same mindset when I came back from my mat leave. And when you come back after a 6 month break, you realize that the whole world has moved on. You are where you are. So naturally, you get into this mode of overperformance trap. You simply switch that button on. And I had this extremely crazy routine. My routine was, as it is, very exhausting because I had to manage my child, I had to manage my work. I would come home, take care of my child, sleep at 10, set an alarm at 12 in the midnight, work till 12:30, again sleep, catch up sleep for a couple of hours, assuming I would be really fresh and up until morning. And I believed this was a super smart strategy to manage my time. But my this is enough moment came to me when the doctor literally had to tell me, this is not working out. You're doing this at the cost of your health, right? And that's when it kind of rang a bell saying, no, this is not how it should be. And the irony is, after this incident, when I have spoken to a lot of women, be it through a lot of coaching conversations, general conversations, what I have realized is this is something which is a bit of a systematic thing that exists, right? The overcompensation comes in different, say, shapes, sizes, and forms. I realized a lot of them were dealing with it. So then my reflection was back to the point that how do you create environment for people where you are kind of not pressurized to be doing that? So looking back, if I had to do one thing differently, I would have told myself, how do I want to pace myself well? Instead of telling myself, oh, how do I prove myself? And my few cents, and this is something now I have started to do, is to whenever you think you are getting into that overperformance trap, look at yourself, zoom out completely, right? Zoom out and look at yourself 10,000 feet above and ask yourself 5 years down the lane, if I look back, will I be proud of myself, or do I think I was really foolish in what I did? In my case now, when I ask that question, I can tell you I thought I was really foolish to do that. And some of these honest reflections comes through when you have those candid conversations. And if there's one thing COVID has done to all of us, one good thing that COVID had done to all of us is to really bring that vulnerability back onto the front burner, so to say. I think it's far more easy to now hold these conversations, be able to identify whenever you are getting into that overperformance trap, and just say, pause, just stop there. And that pause itself, I think, is $1 million gift. And from there, you will have to really figure out how do you want to pace yourself.
Absolutely. So recently, I think just a month back, I was going through your LinkedIn story. There was a post on, I think you actually going on a trekking to a mountain or something like that. Can you actually brief us? Because I found it very interesting.
So I wrote on that predominantly on lines of fears of failure, because it was that moment when I was taking a bigger role. And I had this huge dilemma in my head saying, oh, what if I don't do the role really well, right? A lot of question marks in my mind to an extent, should I even take this role or not in the first place? And that's when I decided to do the trek. And I had a lot of, again, that interplay and interconnectedness between both the topics because I was doing the journey at the same time. And that's when I have kind of realized that experience sometimes matters. That's one. Two, I think a lot of beliefs that you have in your own head, some of them might be self-limiting. Some of them can just be your confidence issues or whatever. When you do some of these experiences really outside the scope of your work, it kind of totally gives you a different narrative altogether. I hope I answered your question.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Like next theme basically is on the leadership on your own terms. Questions around what does leadership look and feel like when you stop trying to fit in and start leading from your core values? And what old rules about being a woman leader did you have to unlearn to grow? Just want to hear it from your words.
Sure. I think it's quite stressful to be really fitting into someone else's idea. It can be for leadership, but even for anything else, right? If I walk into the workplace I really want to be myself. So I can't imagine a situation where I really had to fit in, because I think it gets really difficult for you to deal with it. And I can again share a narrative or a story. Early in my leadership journey, I had this idea in my head on how a leader should be, a certain kind of a personality, energy. I always believed leaders are best when they are really extroverted. So I kept asking myself, because I do have quite a bit of that introverted, reflective, inward focused kind of an individual. So I always wondered, will I be a good leader? Can I be an HR head? Can I lead big teams? Do I need a different kind of energy to be that leader? And I really wasn't sure, right? So I always used to wonder, oh gosh, how does this happen? Can I become that leader, so to say? But what really was this magical experience for me was when I really had to work with a couple of really, really extroverted leaders directly. And I always believed that these lead, because I told them I want to become a people manager, I want to lead teams. And I always thought these guys will come back and tell me feedback about how I demonstrate my energy. But very surprisingly, one, that feedback never came in. But the way I was managed, the way I was respected in the team for who I am and the value that I bring to the table, it just gave me that confidence and that permission to be leading from where I am. And to me, that was really my aha moment, right? Otherwise, imagine the last 10 years if I had spent my energy on being someone else, trying to be extroverted the minute I step into the office, trying to portray a different kind of energy in front of my team. I think I can't imagine how unsustainable it would have been for me. And when you talk about core values, Ravi, my core value has been let my work speak, right? So when I became a leader, I wasn't very sure if that was enough. Is just leading by example, leading by integrity, is that enough? Does it have to be, do I have to be carrying some really different traits or whatever? But now I know how it has to be, right? And as a leader, when you yourself have some of these lived experiences, I think it's immensely helpful because it also helps you eliminate bias for your team. For example, when I'm taking a hiring decision or when I'm taking a people decision, you don't box people saying, oh, this personality doesn't fit in, or that personality is how a team leader should be, or this personality should be some or HR head should be. So you kind of try to be as unbiased as possible. And to me, just one more point is this is where the power of truly inclusive organizations come into play. Because, and I work for one, and I have always seen that we do completely normalize inclusion. And you don't box people and you say, as long as you bring your best self to work, I think that's really great.
Perfect, Swapna. Thank you. Uh, let's move to the imposter syndrome vis-a-vis systemic gaslighting. Questions are around what helped you begin trusting your voice in rooms where you were often the only woman or the youngest. Basically, leaning into listening to you as you explore this. Swapna.
Again, a very interesting question. I don't know if I have an example where I was the only woman or the youngest woman in the room, so to say, but I do have a couple of perspectives,
Sure.
more on lines of how do you trust your own voice, so to say, right?
Sure.
For me, and just as a bit of a context, I love reading real stories of people. So I read a lot of autobiographies, I read a lot of memoirs. And at one stage, I told myself I have to read women leader stories. And that was the time I've read books like Michelle Obama's, Sheryl Sandberg, Jacinta Ardern, Indra Nooyi. And the first time it surprised me so much when I finished all these books because I was really able to connect the themes. And I had to tell myself, oh, okay, so when we talk about imposter, it's not just with me.
Yeah.
It's not just with the people who are around me. It could actually happen with a CEO, a COO, or even the first lady of the country.
Yeah.
That's when again I kind of had this reflection that it's probably in the air that we breathe in itself, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a good reflection to have, because then you're not isolating yourself to say, oh, I think I'm all alone in this, which then puts a lot of undue pressure onto you.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of things that I have figured out during the course of the time, through a lot of coaching conversations, interactions with leaders, is a few things on how do you deal with this imposter sometimes.
Mm.
The first one is perception versus reality. You could have 100 perceptions in your mind, but the reality can be totally different.
Yeah.
And I'll connect the fear of failure topic that we spoke about, the mountains, the trekking, and all that, right? So I had this fear of failure. I was going through my coaching conversations, and my coach asked me, Swapna, give me an example when you have miserably failed. And I thought for a very long time, and I said, I don't have one. So she said, no, but just think about it again. I want an example where you have failed.
Mm.
So I had to tell her, I have examples where I have done really well, or I have examples where I have just done, okay job. But I don't think I've had a situation where I really failed.
Mm.
And that was my aha moment when you talk about imposter, because you're always contemplating in your set saying, oh, am I good enough? What if I fail kind of thoughts?
Yeah.
But in reality, data tells you, no, actually, you haven't failed. So that thought of that perception versus reality,
Mm.
I think that's one thing that I always keep at the top of my head.
Sure.
The second one is the voices in your head and the voices outside.
Yeah.
Now, the voices in my head can be many, right? I
Mm.
can think of 100 counterproductive and not so good things about my own self.
Yeah.
But the reality can be totally something else.
Mm.
And you get to understand that reality only when you talk to people, when you seek for validation,
Mm.
when you ask for feedback, when you try to understand the perspectives of others.
Yeah.
That's when you kind of understand that the voices in my head versus the voices out there with the people, I think are going to be very different.
Right.
And then put some energy in terms of how do you kind of balance
Mm.
both of them, right? And most often than not, Ravi, we also overestimate how much others notices our mistakes. For
Right.
example, I do make a mistake. There's no point that you beat yourself up for it for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Because what is very interesting, and this is again something I realized over a period of time, people are only busy focusing on themselves.
Yeah.
Imagine you're in a theater or you're doing a play yourself,
Mm.
and you are one among the many folks who are doing a theater. Where do you put your energy? Do you put your energy on your script, your actions, how you are showing up?
Yeah.
Or do you focus on what the person to the left or right is doing? You focus on your own self, right?
Absolutely.
So that was again a bit of a late realization that I have had, that this is something I share with people as well, saying don't beat yourself up if something doesn't go well.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I think it's important to kind of really move on. And to the point that you mentioned about gaslighting, when you have these imposter feelings, that's when you are prone to that vulnerability of being gaslit by others.
Right.
So that's where the journey begins with you saying, again, now, how do you manage your imposter?
Mm.
It is systemic. You're not all alone. There are ways in which you can deal with it if you're invested. And then that's important, not just for you, but also for those really around you.
Absolutely. A lot of reflections, Swapna. I think very, very insightful and useful. Now, one question is if you could whisper one sentence of reassurance to your younger self during those pressure filled years, what would that be?
I would say just relax. Pace yourself, just relax.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that is just one thing that comes onto my mind,
Sure.
because I think I've always been that constant thing of go, 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 what if? what if this happens? What if that doesn't happen? But then, if I had to look back now, I would say just relax, pace yourself, and then keep going.
Perfect. Perfect. So as we wrap up, I love to leave our listeners with something very, very practical. What is one daily practice you would suggest for those who want to succeed in leadership without losing themselves?
I would really say reflection, Ravi. Again, like I said, in the mad rush that we are in,
Sure.
we are kind of heavily focused on what is that we need to do, but really taking out that time to pause, reflect, look back,
Sure.
look forward, and be able to kind of center yourself to what really matters the most. I think that's really important.
Let's move to the final theme on unlearning to grow, Swapna. One of the questions is how can teams normalize recovery and rest without labeling it as disengagement or community?
So I do have a bit of a strong view here.
Sure.
If recovery is seen as disengagement, I think we are clearly at a wrong place. In fact, recovery, it's not an individual luxury. Also, from an organization lens, if you look at it, is actually a strategic priority. But for us to really talk about rest and recovery, I think there are multiple angles that we really need to kind of peel off, right?
Sure.
To begin with, starting from the perspective of an individual, I think there's a lot of bias and stigma that you should take a break only when it really necessitates, which means when you're sick, when you're traveling, when you have something that's really non-negotiable, but never just to recharge. And for many, and I'm okay to confess that I also had this mindset many years back, leave is meant to be never taken just for the sake of it. You should always have a reason behind it, right? And I remember, especially during New Year's, festivals, and all, there's this common phenomenon I would see in people saying, "Oh, why just stay at home? Why don't I go to work?"
Yeah.
Looking back now, to me, it really sounds funny a little bit, but back then we kind of haven't realized the valuable angle of really taking time to really recharge, rest, recover, and all that, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you had to do that, somewhere there is this feeling in people that I'm just lacking around or I'm not committed enough.
Yeah.
So to me, it's very important that we deal with this guilt spiral about wellness breaks. And I think that's been like a really big barrier.
Absolutely.
Also, I have observed that there is also this fear of escalations. For example, what if I'm not around and something really blows out of proportion?
Yeah.
Or I don't want to come to a scenario where I take a 10-day vacation, I come back, I have to address 300 emails and 30 escalations.
Yeah.
Now, this is where your team ecosystem comes into place, right? How is that we kind of support each other, that peer buddy system support that we have, where you say that, okay, when I'm gone, be rest assured, someone else is managing for me and vice versa.
Yeah.
So that boils down to the fact that the trust, the camaraderie that we have in the teams. And also for me personally, my own perspective on recovery changed when I lived outside of India. Because the kind of emphasis people place on recovery, it's really at a premium and it's really non-negotiable. So when I worked outside India and when I had to take a full 10-day break for the new year, that was my aha moment. And you have no idea the kind of energy I came back with, the creativity, the clarity, the enthusiasm that I came back with.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting because I have probably never done that prior to that, right?
Yeah.
Also, and later I have started to observe the trend a little bit. And what I have observed, and also this is something the research says. For example, I have worked through the year without taking any breaks whatsoever. You would have worked through the year, but with a couple of proper vacations.
Yeah.
Our productivity is either likely to be the same, or high chances you would probably be more productive and more creative and more energized than me. And that's what recovery does to you. Now, this is also not just at an individual level, this is also at an organization level, which means if there are two organizations, one organization that does not believe rest and recovery is a strategic priority, vis-a-vis an organization who believes it is, and if you compare the productivity or the engagement or the burnout in the teams, I think the organization who believes that this is a strategic priority will produce better metrics. Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. And there's a lot of research around it, right? Now, where it all comes together, in my view, is the role a leader has here. That's immense. And you should be the one who should role model and prioritize rest and recovery. Now, rest and recovery also doesn't mean you're talking about those 10-day vacations, 2-week vacations, but really those micro moments, that micro breaks that you get to take. And if you do take one, just call it out. For example, when I take a power nap, it happens once in a while. When I really need a power nap for 30 minutes, I make it a point to call it out in front of my team. Or when you're the days when you have to log out at 4:35, call it out with your team, because that's how you kind of give permission to your people and say, yeah, this is an acceptable behavior, right? So somewhere that leadership role modeling, doing it yourself and prioritizing recovery for your own self, I think is really, really important. And you would have, I'm sure, come across a lot of research around these topics. It's all there. I think there's enough numbers, enough data-driven content that's available, which says this is how organizations should be. And also, having worked outside of India, I really think we do have opportunities in India. I think we have gotten a lot better in the last decade or two, but I still believe we have opportunities to do a lot around recovery, fitness, mental health, because there's still a lot of stigma, bias, a lot of childhood conditioning, for example. So as a child, I have never seen my parents take a break for anything else except when they were sick or when they were traveling. So naturally, I also embrace the same, right? So I think there are a lot of opportunities to be dealing with across levels, whether you're an individual, on how do you support each other in your own teams, for that matter. As a leader, how could you role model? But also as a country, I believe we can do a lot better, and that's really in our hands.
Absolutely, Swapna. I think I completely agree with you, because working abroad and actually looking at how people treat their leaves, and I've actually seen it when I was working with HSBC, Wells Fargo. Those 10 days are sacred. They don't even touch the laptop.
Exactly.
Right. And here, myself, when I go for any kind of holidays, every now and then, has an email come. That's the kind of mindset we have. So I think very well said over there that we have a lot of practices that we need to take it from abroad. And that actually comes because you actually work abroad. That perspective definitely helps. Moving to the final one, what old rules about being a woman leader did you have to unlearn to grow?
Sure. One of the biggest old rules that I had to unlearn was to be this superwoman, always saying yes to everything, juggling multiple things at the time, multitasking, never be able to say no, still have this nice smile on your face, manage everything that comes your way personally and professionally. And also that's something that I have tried, but over a period of time, by practice that it's not sustainable. And picture this, that it's that superwoman with 10 hands juggling through 100 different things that you want to do. So there is this aspiration you would have to do everything that comes your way, only to realize, one, it's not sustainable. Two, it's not really in the right spirit of your own mental health, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I did speak previously about a lot of real stories that I have always come across, I have read. And I realized, again, this is a bit of a systemic issue. because somehow you have been conditioned to be that superwoman who can do everything and anything. But I have learned through experience, through books, through a lot of lived experiences, that there are moments in your life where done is better than being perfect.
Absolutely.
And if you are able to have that realization, awareness, and consciousness, I think we are better off, right? Let me take a quick metaphor. Imagine there's a ladder which is straight up, and if you have to go through the ladder, and if you start running upwards, you have every reason why you can maintain your pace, isn't it?
Yeah.
You start running, you just go up till there. But imagine you have a spiral staircase. Now, what happens with a spiral staircase? Every time there is a turn, you tend to slow down, catch your pace, again, catch your speed, go up a floor, and then there's again a turn. So, again, you gently slow down, and then again, you go up, right?
Yeah.
So, and if I have to convert this analogy into our career, especially for women, it's a good reflection, even though it was a late reflection, to say that a woman's career is more like a spiral staircase. And it's good that you get comfortable with this fact that a career is never a straight line for you. It really follows the lifeline that you have based on the many events that you have in your life.
Absolutely.
So that reflection for me, and that's an old rule that I kind of let go of to be that superwoman and say that you need to embrace those moments where you say done, but I don't need to be perfect. But then you also gather all your energy and gravitas to say, after this particular time, I'm going to shine through up. And I always like coming back to some of these reflections on what does some of these learned behaviors do for you as a leader. You obviously become more empathetic, you become more compassionate when you're dealing with people, and I think that's going to be immensely helpful, because otherwise I'm going to have standard expectations of everyone,
Yeah.
not realizing the impact of some of these life events on our people, and that's going to be really tough for everyone.
Absolutely.
I hope that resonates with you,
No,
Ravi.
absolutely. Absolutely. I had my mother working for 40 years, my wife working for around 20 years. So I can actually feel what you're trying to say, and very, very relatable, Swapna. Um, we had a kind of an objective for this particular uh, episode as such, and you helped really. You opened up deeply human, often unspoken conversations around leadership, emotional well-being, and self-worth, especially for women navigating high-performance cultures, and explored the personal cost of high-pressure work environments, emotional layers of leadership identity, creating a reflective and empowering dialogue that actually provides both emotional validation and practical strategies for thriving without losing oneself, especially for women. So thanks a lot for your time. Lot of reflective leadership stories you actually narrated throughout. I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners would find it very insightful. Any parting words before I catch you again, maybe after 3 to 6 months again?
No, a big thank you for giving me the opportunity, Ravi.
Absolutely, Swapna. Thanks for your time. We'll meet again. Sure.
Thank you. Bye.